exactly at the point many of us feared and even predicted.
Thank you, JB. Truer words were never said. This is the Grunge Bible Podcast, episode 140. And my name is Ethan Shalloway, and I'm joined with Chris Salona, exactly where a lot of people predicted and even feared the opposite of that. But Chris, how are you?
I'm great, Ethan Shalloway. It is good to be here for episode number 140, and we're going to be talking about a topic today that I've been very excited to talk about for a long time. And in relation to the intro, I think that soundbite is just going to be a part of our intro, for the indefinite future. We were in a very similar scenario. You're traveling home for the Thanksgiving holiday today, the day that we're recording on November 21st, and we were supposed to record on Monday, November 20th. A call was placed between the two of us, and it was one of those things where you just, we're exactly where we feared we have to do the podcast, and we didn't necessarily want to. So, we pushed it back to today, but we're on a tight timeline today. This is exactly what we feared. And you know what? We predicted it as well. Our pain is self-chosen in a lot of ways. A lot of people's pain is self-chosen. And we're no different, but I'm doing all right. I can't complain. I got a short week of work. Thanksgiving holiday is mere days away. And this episode's coming out on the tail end of Thanksgiving, the following Monday. So we'll kind of keep things rolling here. How are you today?
Doing well. As we said, I have a plane to catch to get home, which is great news. So this is the last, one of the things that we need to get done before we do that. And, we knew exactly what we were getting ourselves into, and we did it anyway. And that's what it's all about sometimes, cutting it close. So, I'm doing well. I'm doing really well. Like I said, I'm excited to go home and be home with the family. It'll be nice to just reset, even though it hasn't been that long, but I feel like I need to go back. So I'm pretty excited.
Something about seeing like November in the double digits for days. It just kind of makes you Jones for, getting some home time. So I'm glad that you're going to be able to have that.
Football's ramping up. The NFL is getting going. You got the holiday season here. The new year is right around the corner.
It's coming.
A lot going on. Yeah, exactly. This is like, it all speeds up. It feels very busy. So.
Oh yeah. It is
I'm doing good.
Rolling. That's good.
So this is episode 140. Thank you all for listening and coming checking out the page. Please, share it with your friends. Maybe somebody else will really enjoy listening to us. And then think about becoming a patron. And we have 3 levels, 2, 5, and 10 that we are very thankful for, because I don't know, Chris. I mean, we don't do it for the money, but it sure helps. You know what I mean? Not that we get a lot of money, but the idea that exactly.
We don't make any money off of this.
The idea that somebody's liking and wants to give us money is cool.
Absolutely. But I mean, it is helpful because while we don't make any money off of it, it's nice to not have to dip into our own pockets
we have
to
to
make
spend
the podcast.
Money. Exactly.
Yeah. So, I still think, we're probably...
And the producer wants to raise again.
Yeah, the producer, he does want to raise, and he's earned it too. I mean, last week with the sound bite, I mean, the seamless inclusion of that sound bite in our intro, and a great sounding episode. I think our producer Drew McFadden has deserved a raise, and you all, the people, can make that possible by becoming a Patreon supporter at one of those 3 levels, as Ethan just mentioned. And as we like to do, if you really up the ante and join at the $10 level, I do get to say your name every single week until you decide to stop giving us money. So you can ride that merry-go-round as many times as you would like. And we've got a lot of people who have been riding for a long time. In the words of Chris Cornell, they're riding us all the way. The mailman type vibe going on here. So I'd like to thank our top tier supporters at this time. And their names are Lauren Irene, Jamie Lynn, Fuck Soup, The Blue Owl, Jade Mercado, Alexis Shannon, Carlene Salona, Kara K, Nikki 6, Chris LSMS, Black Hole Sean, Eddie Vedder got me through my second divorce, Seattle 4 fanboy from New Jersey, Alex Long, Faith Bittner, Michael McCready's Mustache, Granny Grunge, Epona, Corden Stewart, Eric R. Berry, Gochu John, Lamellar Bone, D-Boat, Keith White, Sherry Matthews, and Pile of Punk. And I just speed ran that whole thing. That feels pretty good. I'm getting good at that. I figure fucking 140 times in, I should be okay at it.
Yeah, we should time it. Have a
set a PR,
personal best, and really follow along with the stats.
Well,
here.
The PRs have been falling lately too, in a lot of different ways. We're feeling good, and we set a new PR every time we record another episode of this podcast. So
But we need a few members to join because we are below. We're below our patron PR level.
We're consistent, but
so
we're not. Yeah, exactly.
We're not at our highest. So let's bump it up for the holiday season. Get in the game. And we know you've been listening for many episodes out there.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that was like King Buzzo stole my hair last week. He's like, it took you guys 130 weeks and you finally broke me down and got me to, got me to give you guys money. So you never know. It's like that meme of like the one guy digging to find diamonds and he's walking away. And then the other person just underneath, he's still digging and he's just about to get there. Like we are the people digging for diamonds. Like we're still going down that path, and the
gold rush is coming.
The gold rush is coming. Well, I mean, 98% of podcasters, they quit right before they're about to hit it big and make a lot of money. So we're trying to be a part of that 2% that doesn't quit. So we've got a lot of topics to discuss, and we will continue to do so. And as you saw when you clicked on this episode, we are going to be talking about Mark Lanegan today in honor of his birthday, which was on November the 25th. He would have been, I believe, 59 years old. So we're very excited to talk about that. But before we do that, we do have to commemorate what was hip and happening on this day in music history, November 27th. So Ethan, shall I begin?
Yeah. You begin, and then I got to take the
Beatles, I was going to say, there's a couple things here that I think you're going to want to talk about. But we'll start with a very notable occurrence. On November 27th, 1942, Jimi Hendrix was born in Washington State. And obviously, we don't really need to say anything about Jimi Hendrix. We all know him. We all love him. One of the preeminent guitar just machines of the era. My words stopped working there for a second, but Jimi Hendrix, happy
vocal
birthday.
Typo.
Exactly. Yeah. I made a verbal typo again. The frequency of those is skyrocketing lately, but yeah, Jimi Hendrix born on this day in 1942. Ethan, let's kick it over to you for the next one.
It's interesting. Any one of these dates, I mean, the calendar changes. The days of the week change. So, like, any of these could have been on Thanksgiving. Jimi Hendrix could have been born on Thanksgiving.
Right.
November 27th, right in the wheelhouse.
Yeah. I don't care enough to, like, consult the 1942 calendar to see, but it is interesting to think about.
Yeah. So, maybe Thanksgiving 1967. We don't know. November 27th.
Yeah.
The Beatles released their double EP, Magical Mystery Tour in the U.S., which also served as the soundtrack for their TV film of the same name. So there you go. Beatles in 1967, Magical Mystery Tour.
I'll tell you, I'd like the Beatles to go on a magical mystery tour from which they don't return. That'd be nice. That'd be very nice.
I want Mrs. Frizz to take them on the bus.
The magic school. That show was awesome.
Oh, yeah. Incredible. Gas,
they had the little picture books too, I think, if I remember right, as a kid reading those.
I was huge into that.
Frizzle was the
up,
goat.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It always made me want to get on the school bus.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Made it cool,
Exactly. That's what we have to do sometimes with the kids. You have to take very normal activities and make them cool and get them excited about it. And that's not a segue that I can use, so I'm just going to keep on rolling here. In 1970, on this day, George Harrison releases All Things Must Pass, his first album post-Beatles breakup. And this is probably my favorite album by any of the singular Beatles. The title track, All Things Must Pass, from that album is one of my all-time favorites, and it's just a beautiful song with a great message that never goes out of style. There's a great performance of it from, I think it was his last public performance in like 1997 or 95 or something, right before he kind of got quite ill. He performed it on, I think, VH1 or something like that, with John Fugelsang as the host, and is really, really great. He wasn't going to perform, and they just happened to have a guitar in the studio, and they asked him if he would play, and he said sure. And he played that song. It was really, really special. That song's meant a lot to me the last couple of years. So happy anniversary to that album, All Things Must Pass.
Yeah, it's a good reminder for the good and the bad. If it's good, you got to cherish while you have it because it's going to pass. And if it's bad, buckle down. You'll get through it because all things must pass.
Absolutely.
1986, Bon Jovi scored their first #1 hit in the U.S. with You Give Love a Bad Name. It's a good song.
No, it's not.
Right?
It is not a good song.
All right, John Bon Jovi is maybe on the shit list here at GB. I think we've talked.
John Bovey.
John Bovey,
Ron
Bovey.
John Bovey's hit song, "You Give Name a Bad Love." Yeah, I hate John Bon Jovi's music.
Bad name love gives you bad John Bovey.
Late Seth with Night Myers.
Oh my gosh. That's all to say about that.
Yeah.
1991, Freddie Mercury's funeral. Sad day. Freddie Mercury, I know you recently proclaimed you're not a huge Queen fan.
Right.
Which is sad, but also, whatever.
He was just unbelievable though.
He was one of the best talents in the world at the time and all time for sure.
And he had
really
passed
special.
away on November 24th, 1991, and the funeral was held a few days later. A very private ceremony with, the band members, some family and some friends.
Possibly on Thanksgiving.
Possibly on Thanksgiving. That's the caveat to all of this. This next one would be an incredible Thanksgiving Day news drop because on this day in 2017, People magazine named Blake Shelton the sexiest man alive. And what do we think about that? What do we think about Blake Shelton?
I mean, he has obviously his music career, but he was one on The Voice, right?
Because he was married to Miranda Lambert, and then they got divorced because he was with Gwen, and I think they're still married, Gwen and Blake.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice little voice love triangle, or I guess just voice adultery. It happens. That's Hollywood, baby.
Was it adultery?
I don't know. Who's to say, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he could say, but we can't.
He could say it. Yeah.
I don't know. Sexiest man alive. I know Jason Kelsey was up for it. He got second this year, which is pretty.
That's pretty good. It's like runner up.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
It is such a weird award because, it's only famous people. I mean, I don't know. It's really hard to say. There's a lot of good-looking people out there in the world.
There's a lot of good-looking people out there who have.
But it's
not
cool.
Been nominated.
Contests are always cool. So whatever.
Only one person can win. So I guess congrats to 2017 Blake Shelton for winning.
I wonder if he probably has the timepiece.
There's got to be some sort of like award. Like it's probably more fancy than a plaque, though. You would think maybe like a watch or something nice.
I mean, really, what they should give him is, in The Big Lebowski when he's looking
the
through
mirror. Absolutely,
he's got through the looking
you
to the
are
mirror.
The little Lebowski urban achievers.
You are the sexiest man alive. It's just a mirror. Yeah.
That's
setup.
That's smart. I think we should suggest that, but we're probably not going to.
Last
one.
on the list. In 2021, Taylor Swift extended version of All Too Well with a running time of 10 minutes, 13 seconds. Hits number 1 on the Hot 100, becoming the longest song ever to top the chart. Don McLean held the record since 72 with American Pie, running 8:36 at the top.
So not to be confused with Dan Campbell of the Wonder Years version of All Too Well, which in my opinion is better. With Future Teens backing as the band, it's just an absolute tearjerker, and it's Dan Campbell. So sometimes you just have to
cover of Swift?
Yeah, he covered Taylor Swift's All Too Well. Sometimes, Ethan, you just have to say fuck it and put on Dan Campbell All Too Well and just let it roll a little bit. It kind of
looks like I'm doing that for my flight.
Yeah, I think you should. But Taylor Swift's version is great. The mini film that they did was really cool as well. I found myself watching that at different points. It's pretty quality, I would say.
Yeah, she's very talented.
Very talented.
Very, very good at producing cool shit.
She's good at everything.
Yeah, there's. I think maybe it's her team, but
yeah,
a lot of artists
tide
out
raises
there.
all boats.
Yeah. Yep.
Absolutely.
That's all I had to say about that. I mean,
yeah, I think that's all I have to say.
Taylor Swift comes up a lot on this too.
Taylor Swift comes up more than you would think.
Everywhere. So
yeah, that's true. It's just always like you never know like which corner she's going to be around. She's just all over the place.
She is massive. So
exactly,
not physically. No.
Maybe she'll have to play. The Chiefs need some wide receivers. I mean, if she gets her 40 time down a little bit, she can play. She can play with Travis. Put him out wide. Travis in the slot, and then just Taylor the deep threat down the sideline. I think they could scheme something up.
I'm sure it would work.
Yeah.
We'll be fine though. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah, we'll be fine. Well, that's this day in music history for November 27th. So I hope you enjoyed that segment. But now it's time to get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. And this is an episode that we've had the idea to do for a long time, but we just wanted to attempt to do it correctly. And this is a point in time where we think it's, this is just the time we have to do it. His birthday was just a few days ago, and obviously he's been, he hasn't been on this earth for almost 2 years now, but this is the Mark Lanegan episode. So we've spoken about him, obviously, on the podcast many, many times. We released a special episode, I think, the week that he had passed away. I think we may have even recorded the day that we found the news, but this episode is just going to kind of talk about him and who he was and why he's so special to us, and why his music is just of such significance. And I think in his catalog, you're going to find there's something for everybody out there. So really looking forward to having this discussion today. And it's important to note, we're just fans of his. There's actually a lot of really, really good information about his life. We're not necessarily going to get into his life, because how could you in like a 1 hour podcast episode? But he's got a book that came out in 2020 called Sing Backwards and Weep, his memoirs. And I recommend you pick this up and you read it. It's one of the best books, period, that I've ever read. I've read it, I think, 3 times now. And it's harrowing. It's just a trip. And it kind of illuminates, the man who was making the music and what goes into that and what went into that. So I recommend you read that if you're a fan of music in general and just good literature, because this man, he could sing, he could write songs, he could write poetry, and he could write books too. I also recommend the editor of Mark Lanegan's memoir is a guy named Mishka Shubali, and he had a podcast that ran for a couple of years, and he released a few episodes talking about Lanegan. Obviously knew him very well and was very friendly with him. I listened to those podcast episodes periodically, and he's got a couple of great pieces about some of Lanegan's albums, particularly Bubblegum and Gargoyle. If you go and you find those on the internet, they're really, really good. And I think it's best, you learn about this man through his own words and through the words of people who knew him. And I think that's an important part about learning about the man. So,
yeah, I'd like to reiterate, he has a lot of stuff out there. Obviously, all the stuff with Screaming Trees and Queens of the Stone Age and whatnot. But he has, I think, 12 solo albums on top of all the collaborations, and then he has books. He was an absolute machine with getting his emotions and words out there, and there's no shortage of stuff that you can dive into. Yeah. And and the crazy proceed with caution, of course, but you can go as deep as you want, and that's what you did, Chris. That's what you've done in the past couple of years. So And it's one of those things where once it's kind of pulls you in, I definitely can tell it pulls you in, and you just want to hear and consume as much as you can. And there's a lot. Yeah. So, and
let's speak to that. Let's just kind of go through a list, and this is not an exhaustive list of people that he had collaborated with and that he had worked with on music. Screaming Trees, Mad Season, Queens of the Stone Age, Duke Garwood, Isabel Campbell, Alan Johannes, Greg Dooley and the Gutter Twins and the Twilight Singers, PJ Harvey, Massive Attack, Joe Cardamone, Chris Christopherson, and Kurt Cobain. And that's just scratching the surface. And the other incredible thing, all of the solo albums, all of the projects, all of the features that he did, all of the parts that he did in bands over the years, he lost a significant number of years of his life due to his addiction and to struggling with his addiction, in and out of rehab, in and out of, halfway homes and just different things like that. And he was able to put out such an incredible output despite all of that, not only the time loss, but just the health loss. And that's something I think that's so captivating to me about his life is he was one of those guys that he objectively should have died so many times and he didn't. And you get to the point that it's okay, well, if this man isn't dead yet, nothing could ever kill him. And that's why I think for me, it was such a big shock, that he did end up passing away in February of 2022. It's holy shit, this man went through so many different things with, all different types of addiction, homelessness, run-ins with the law, putting himself in situations where you can and probably should get hurt. or robbed, or just, I mean, everything. He had stood down every single type of situation, and the fact that he survived long enough and got back to points of thriving creatively and hopefully personally. I can't speak to that, obviously. Is just, it's unbelievable. People always talk about Keith Richards as being like the guy that like the world couldn't kill. Like Lanegan was that dude.
Oh yeah, it's so true. Everything you just said. Like, if I go out drinking and if I have a hangover, like I can't respond to emails, let alone write songs and
let alone tour the world writing and playing music. And it's unbelievable. And Lanegan said in his memoirs and in interviews, he's like, the only thing that saved me from my alcohol addiction and dying from alcoholism was becoming a drug addict, which is just an unbelievable thing to verbalize and to have it be true. And I think the thing about him, not even getting to his voice yet, which is obviously a conversation all his own, but just like his history and his experiences is just like, how many different sides to him there were. And we always talk about like the duality of man and just like the fact that, you could go back and forth. And I think, his story, as it relates to his addictions, I think is very complimentary of a lot of other stories where, there's something about the human mind, at least in my mind, that it's like you think of, when you go through a hard time or you struggle with something and you beat it that first time, you're like, okay, I'm done with that. Like, this is over. I beat it. I triumphed. Mark Lanegan's life was not like that. So actually how the book ends, is, he goes to rehab, right? And he has this experience in rehab, without getting into the details of it. And he's like, I knew from that point forward, like I had a desire to become clean, and to be in recovery and stay there. And Mishka, the editor of the book, was like, holy shit, dude. Like, and then that was it. Like, you were clean. He's like, hell no. He's like, I relapsed dozens and dozens of times. I was kicked out of like a few different rehabilitation centers. If it wasn't this drug, it was that drug. I'd go years and then I'd relapse again. And it's just like one of those things that you feel that in his music, just like that persistent struggle. And like, we all have struggles, the severity of them and what we're struggling with changes, but everybody can kind of relate to that thing. There's always parts of our lives that are challenging, and as he wrote in a song off of Field Songs, living's not hard. It's just not easy. Always keeping the dogs off.
Yeah. I think, he said that, he proclaimed that he was an alcoholic at age 12. Yeah. It started early and if it wasn't like hard drugs, like you said, he got his voice. He said, smoke like 4 packs a day, right? Of
Unbelievable,
cigarettes. Yeah. That's like 80 cigarettes.
Camel Crushers were his cigarette of choice in his later life.
And it is, like you said, it's amazing that he survived so long and was able to put so much stuff out there. And it's a sad loss. It is interesting to hear stories, people talking about him, because obviously we never met him, but
right.
You're going to get, people say that he wasn't the easiest to deal with a lot of time, and that comes with addiction in a lot of, every case basically.
Absolutely. And just speaking to that, the last solo album that he released before he died was in 2020. It was called Straight Songs of Sorrow. And there's a song on there called Skeleton Key. And that album came out at the shittiest point in my life. And I was reading his book and I was, listening to everything that he had ever done. But speaking to his own life, there's a lyric in that song, Skeleton Key. And he goes on to say, I spent my life trying every way to die. Is it my fate to be the last one standing? And that's something that you can't write unless you've stood in the fire and you've stood down the train coming at you. And just like his capacity to, seemingly endure everything that could possibly break a human being, and still emerge unbroken on the other side of it, and able to channel that into art and to create art, and to explain his experiences in a way that it could apply to so many different people. And I think that's the one commonality throughout his music, because that's the thing. Like, I feel bad for grunge rock fans that only know of him from the Screaming Trees or maybe from Mad Season, Long Gone Day. His solo catalog and his collaborations were absolutely incredible. And I think that's the most impressive thing about his career to me, is not his voice, not who he collaborated with, but how he felt and sounded completely at home in every single genre that he tried to create. And, he started in like a psychedelic rock band in the Trees, and then became like more like, grunge rocky, and then you go on to the Mad Season project and you do stuff with Queens of the Stone Age. You write, singer-songwriter stripped down acoustic solo stuff. And then eventually, you find yourself doing soul music, doing electronic music, doing atmospheric stuff, folk stuff. I mean, it's all over the place. And he sounded at home, and he pulled off everything that he did. And every single genre, every single collaborator, it felt like that project was something that he was destined to do, which is not something that anybody can just do. And there's a lot of singers and artists that I really admire, but they attempt to do certain projects, and it's just like it just doesn't fit, right?
Yeah.
Maybe Mark Lanegan, I mean, he was able to do absolutely everything. I mean, Whiskey for the Holy Ghost, the album in 1994 that came out, he was working on that simultaneously as when Sweet Oblivion was moving throughout the charts. And I mean, two completely different things. And then he goes on and he writes Long Gone Day with Lane in the studio one day, and that's just such a completely delicate ballad. They've got a saxophone in there, for God's sake, I mean, so talk about being a musical chameleon. That's what this man was.
It's really interesting that you hear all these stories about, how difficult he was, but yet the collaboration list and what he did with people is so long. Like, honestly, getting, being in a band and getting stuff done and not breaking up and fighting is difficult. And yet he worked with everybody. And that's just, I mean, that's impressive, because that's not easy, like sober or whatever. So I feel like there'd be so many complications in all these projects, and probably a lot of stuff that fell through that, we never know about.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really good story that Mark Lanegan and Kurt Cobain actually got together, and they were going to try to do a Lead Belly cover album. And they just they got into the studio. I think this must have been in maybe 92 or somewhere around there. And it just it didn't work out because both of them were kind of being deferential to the other person, and no one was really taking charge of the sessions. And Kurt, in a lot of ways, by Mark's account, kind of looked up to Mark, because Mark had started his career with the Trees, before Nirvana had even begun. And Mark standing there no, you're doing some incredible stuff. And it's just one of those things. I mean, you think about all those collaborations that, could have happened or almost happened or didn't happen. And also the fact that the Trees were even able to put out is the records that they did with Mark completely in the throes of a very, very aggressive heroin addiction, addiction to just about anything, is really, really wild. And even a lot of his solo stuff, drug-induced psychosis, withdrawal, everything was always on display with him. And it's just like you said at the beginning, it's you go out drinking one night and, you're out of commission the next day. And how Mark and people like him were able to make music and be creative is something that's really, really, really impressive. And at the end, obviously, I'm so happy that he was able to get to a space where he was clean, and he was able to, focus on stuff and, be married and have that life for himself as well. And really kind of, move to wherever region that he wanted to musically. Because I think at the end of the day, it was a couple of weeks ago, but I mentioned that quote where, Mark was like, if I never made a penny off of it, I'd still do it because the music is its own reward. And you can really see that with the path that he took. And the people that he collaborated with, and just the weird stuff that he pops up on. I'm still discovering holy shit, Mark did a song with this person, or oh, he's featured on this song. It's really, really impressive. And it's just somebody that was in it for the right reasons, and music gave more to him than any sort of success associated with the music ever could have, which is something that's really special. And I think is the key ingredient to having staying power when it comes to making music.
So let's talk specifically about his voice, right? I mean, So a lot of people out there, like I said, there's a lot of biography out there that you can get into, but you guys obviously have heard him and you know him as an artist. So I think we want to highlight a few things of what we like about his songs and what he did. Obviously the lyrics, I think, there are, a million, right? Maybe more than some of the other guys that we talk about. I mean, he really was a writer. But his voice, he kind of doesn't get talked about as having the gifted voices like the Cornell or the Staley, but his voice was as unique as they come. And when you get into listening to him, solo stuff specifically, like it's very haunting. And so, Chris, like, what does it for you with his voice, and like, why would you argue? Because I think you said it on here that you would argue that he's one of the best vocal talents, like in the group. I believe that was like, maybe 30 episodes or something.
Yeah,
you're talking about
I still stand by that. I think Mark's voice is very misunderstood by a lot of people that maybe have only heard Nearly Lost You or Dollar Bill or, Sweet Oblivion. And that was an incredible performance, obviously, on that album. And there's just something about, I think anytime you have a voice that's kind of in the register that Mark's is, and it's kind of like gruff and rough around the edges, there's a couple of comparisons that people always throw out. And throughout his career, he was plagued by these comparisons to Tom Waits or to Leonard Cohen or to Jim Morrison. And a lot of his biographers and friends had, they've mentioned that like he fucking hated those comparisons. And like all of these artists that would be like, essentially just like waxing poetic about his voice, like, oh, he sounds like an ashtray next to an empty whiskey cup in a dimly lit bar. And it's funny because a lot of his biographers, they'll say like Mark wasn't a whiskey guy, he was a gin guy. So it was a conversation all its own. But I think with him, like, to have a voice in that register and still have such nuance to it and such delicacy to it, that's for me what makes his voice so incredible. And I always think of a lot of his work on Whiskey for the Holy Ghost, which was his second solo album, which came out in 1994. A lot of his work on that, I think, is some of his best vocally. And that's right around the time that the trees were going out. Like I mentioned earlier, Sweet Oblivion wasn't that old. And I think about songs like Riding the Nightingale, which I sent to you yesterday. There's a part like 4 minutes in that's just soaring over the top. And then there's even
it's
a song
like Cornell-esque.
Yeah, and like you don't expect it. You don't expect it from
it.
somebody who sang Nearly Lost You. It was like really rough and like almost growling. And there's another song on Whiskey for the Holy Ghost called El Sol, where towards the end, the song kind of builds up and he hits this unbelievable falsetto phrasing for a second, for a little bit there. And it's not something you would expect. And that's why, like, if you want to know and appreciate Mark Lanegan, you have to get into his solo stuff. I mean, the albums that he put out in the 1990s, The Winding Sheet was his first one. He had gotten an advance from Sub Pop to make a solo album, and he didn't know how to play guitar. And the way that he would do it is he had like a Mel Bay guitar chord book, and he was working nights, like doing some security job or something. And he would teach himself the chords, and he would come up with a chord structure first that he kind of could do. And then, or no, it was the other way around. He would come up with a melody in his head and just like figure out the chords that could go on top of it. So it's like a super weird hodgepodge and like the opposite way that you're supposed to do it. But just like, once again, 1990, I mean, the music that he was able to do, songs like Whoa, and his cover of Where'd You Sleep Last Night, or his, his song Wildflowers. Once again, another falsetto part on that. There's just so much nuance to it. There's so much delicacy to it. And he just kind of, we talk a lot on this show about drummers serving the song with, how much or how little of the gas they're willing to apply. And I think that's a perfect method and a perfect part of Mark's voice that needs to be appreciated, and a part of what makes him so great. He had the ability to go the vocal equivalent of 160 miles an hour at any time. But when he chose to do it versus, more importantly, in my opinion, when he chose not to do it, that's what makes him great. He had such an unbelievable feel for the where, the when, the why, and the how of using his voice. And it's all over the place, even with his stuff with Mad Season and Queens of the Stone Age and his collaborations with Isabel Campbell, all over the place. I think that's what makes his voice special.
Yeah, he really used it a lot as an instrument over the choruses and the melodies and stuff. I mean, he would like sing over that all the time, and it was more just notes and a beautiful sound to add to over all the music that was playing. And a lot of artists do that. I mean, Chris Cornell is really good at it. Eddie would hum and do that too. And it's common, but he had a voice where it was, like you said, delicate is a great word, because it is really, maybe people don't think about it as delicate, but when you do listen to it, that's a perfect descriptor.
Yeah. And there's such a good marriage in his voice between being an instrument all its own and being a method for delivering ideas. I think there's some artists that it's like, Well, it's not necessarily about how they sound. It's about the words that they're saying and the lyrics and the concepts that they're trying to bring to you. And then there's other people, it's like, okay, well, like they don't write that great of lyrics, but like their voice sounds absolutely incredible. And Mark had both of those, and he tied them together so effortlessly and so consistency over a period of, 30 years. And it's crazy too, when he started with the Trees, he didn't write the lyrics. He wasn't allowed to. His bandmates wanted to write the lyrics. The Connor brothers were kind of taking that part onto their own devices. And I mean, the fact that like they were doing that, and then all of a sudden, once Mark starts writing his own stuff and having input, I mean, he comes up with such unbelievable ideas throughout his career, is something that's just really, really incredible. He's just kind of always had that ability, it seems like. And it didn't matter who he was working with, like I said, it didn't matter what it sounded like. And it's crazy, I think probably couple of his most famous solo records, I'd say his two are probably Bubblegum, I would say, and Blues Funeral. Bubblegum came out in 2004 and Blues Funeral was in 2012. And all of that stuff is still on display. They're just like they're so eclectic. But because it's all eclectic and it's all unique, it just kind of all makes sense. I mean, Bubblegum has like his most famous probably solo song called Strange Religion, which was one of Anthony Bourdain's favorite songs, actually. But, to have a song like Strange Religion that's a ballad, and then, directly on the same record that a song like Methamphetamine Blues is on, which sounds like a drug-induced fever dream, which it probably was, right? And then to be able to have, such a delicate song like Bombed that he sang with his wife at the time, who was becoming his ex-wife, and they sang on that song together. There's just so much nuance to everything that he did, in his musical catalog. I mean, it's like, I don't even know which ones to really begin to talk about, because they're all really, really impressive, and they're all special to me because I've had a lot of personal experiences with almost all of his catalog at this point.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, when you go to try to get into it, I've done it a few times, and not as much as you, obviously. And it's really, I don't want to like. I mean, he has a sound, right? I mean, he writes a very certain way. I mean, he did a lot of different stuff. But when you get into it, I mean, you can start anywhere with any of those albums, because he delivers on all of them, and they're not like they're critically acclaimed albums that you're going to find. So, but they're more, they're the musicians' albums and stuff that
they didn't have the commercial success.
Yeah, so like it's not a matter of like where do I start? It's not really about that. It's just kind of getting into it and feeling the presence that Mark was able to, the atmosphere that he created in every album. That's what makes him like an awesome songwriter.
Yeah,
because like I said, you can cherry pick any song really, and you're kind of feel the same way.
Oh yeah,
and there's gonna be lyrics in there if you want to cling to, and yeah, I had an interaction with it the other day. I had to go on a walk to clear my head, and I was like, I knew we were doing this, so I put on the album.
Right.
And I just thank God that Chris called me at the end of it and was like, "How you doing, man?" And I was like, I was a little nervous to call you about this, but I needed this call because I just went down the Mark Lanegan trail a little bit, and like I said, I mean, I wasn't even fixated on the lyrics and whatnot, but it created this ambiance when I was walking that served its purpose. And that's the best way to take in his art, probably, is when you're feeling some type of way, but it is like the most dangerous, I guess, too, because he does exactly that. He takes you to the parts that and the parts of your mind and stuff, and just lets you kind of let your mind run wild while he's kind of like providing the atmosphere. Yeah. So it's a little scary at times. But
it really is.
That's what he's good at.
That's what he's good at. That was his wheelhouse. And it's funny, in the late 2010s, he released like a lyrical companion book called I Am the Wolf. And it basically was a compilation of all of the lyrics that he had written. And then he provided a commentary on each of the albums. And it took until 2017's Gargoyle album, the final song on the album, which is called Old Swan. And when he was writing about it in the companion book, he said, "This is probably the first song that I've ever written that is completely devoid of sadness or despair." and that's over 30 years into his career. But I'll tell you, as great as he did the down in the dump stuff, the dark stuff, the, addiction adjacent stuff, the stuff that can legitimately be dangerous if you're not in a good headspace. That song, Old Swan, is one of the best, hand on your shoulders, it's going to be okay, better days are here type songs. And that's on the same album as some songs like Death's Head Tattoo, or Goodbye to Beauty, which are just heavy songs, and that was what he was able to do. And I need to mention a couple of the collaboration albums that he did that I think really, really corner the market on some of like the weirder stuff that he did, that like you definitely don't want to be listening to in certain instances. I know we've been going back and forth about a couple of them, but 2018's With Animals that he did with Duke Garwood, Downwelling, which was a collaboration with Not Waving in 2019, but then the champion of them, in my opinion, was Dark Mark versus Skeleton Joe from 2021 with Joe Cardamone, and that's one that we've been chatting about back and forth a little bit lately. Sunday Night 2:30 a.m. is one of the songs. Then there's another song called I'm gonna fuck up the pronunciation. Hireth or something. It's like a Scottish word that means longing. And they're just like, they're really, really fucking unique songs. And they make you feel a certain way that you don't get every month of your life, even every year of your life. Like there's just not a lot of artists, I think, that have existed that can make you feel the way that Mark's music can make you feel. And it's plastered all over his catalog. Even the stuff that he did with Mad Season, Long Gone Day, and then when they did the reissue of the album in the 2010s, there were some unfinished demos that Lane hadn't done vocals on, and the surviving members of the band reached out to Mark, and said, "Hey, Mark, could you write for these?" We got Black Book of Fear and Slip Away, which are two just completely soul-crushing songs, in the way that only Mark could. And it's just, it's challenging for me, to even figure out a direction of where to take a conversation about his music. Mm-hmm. And I haven't even really talked about today, like my personal experiences with it. It's just like,
yeah. And that collaboration that has, Hireth or Hireth on it, the album cover is like this, light, like blurred light. And I saw it, and like I was listening to it like, late at night, when I was like going to sleep, and and you look at it, and it's like, it's such a psychedelic / like, I don't know, it's hard to see, and it's like a very visual representation of like, exactly. Like it is, I don't know. It fits.
You don't know what it is.
Atmosphere. Yeah. But it fits the atmosphere, and it's exactly like, it was like, we need to put this on there. Mm-hmm. And, he was a very good creator. And I thought he definitely took everything into account when he was writing, and, very sincere and a lot in his words.
Absolutely. And, and I guess, for me, my relationship with his music really started, I think, in 2020. I don't know what it was or why I purchased his book and why I had begun to get into him around the time of March and April of 2020. But I remember getting the book, and then Straight Songs of Sorrow had come out, I believe in early May of 2020. And that was like probably still, even to this point, like the lowest point in my life. Like I was very depressed. I was routinely engaging in activities that are not healthy. And it was so weird. Like I just remember, like, literally the only thing that like made me even halfway excited to like get up the next day, or to move on to the next day, was like, well, I'm still reading this book. And it's And like I still remember listening to that album, the first song, I Wouldn't Want to Say. Like it's just his music and those experiences that I had, like they were so complimentary of one another that like I can still, when I listen to that album, I can remember the way that like my apartment smelled and the way that the light would come in, off of the blinds, and just like I just remember that space that I occupied, and it was such a weird companion in the sense that something that was as dark as what I felt like I was going through, that somehow made it better and made it sustainable. and made it, doable, which is a gift that I don't really think anything else could have given me at that time. And it's weird to talk about it because I haven't really ever talked about a lot of it. But yeah, it was strange. And, from that album, I started going back and I started listening to a lot of his music. And remember that song that I mentioned earlier, El Sol from Whiskey for the Holy Ghost? That song I listened to all the fucking time. And it was so comforting because he was singing about exactly the type of stuff that I felt like I was going through. And he did it in such a way that allowed me to take ownership of his words and of his music. And at a time where I needed it, like I needed something like that in my life, and it was there for me. And he went on to say on Twitter once when they were doing like a live listen from Straight Songs of Sorrow, and he said, I hate to say what the words are about to any tune. And then he went on to say, he's like, by all means, if you connect to these words, they're yours. And that's what I was able to do. He wrote in such a way that, years after the fact, when I needed something and there weren't many things around me to hold on to, like it was there and it was accessible for me. And it's one of those weird things, like somebody you don't know, somebody you'll never meet, somebody who probably wouldn't like me, did something for me that I don't know that I would ever be able to repay, which is a weird thing to verbalize and to even think about.
Yeah, music, we talk about it quite often. I mean, music is expressing emotions that you didn't know how to express, right? And Mark did that for you during that time where it's like, I don't know what I'm going through. And he's like, I got you, Chris. And he's like, I've done it. I've seen it. I made it through. And that's what these artists do a lot of the times is they just help you express emotions that you didn't really know how to do. And then you're able to work through those because, I mean, honestly, like if Mark can do it, if Mark can make it through his, the life that he was through, and a lot of these guys that write stuff that, I mean, like you said, you're just like, you can't write this without going through shit and hell and back. And so a lot of times, there's a comfort. It's like, okay, like, people have fought this battle before. I'm not fighting it alone. Let's get through it.
And just the fact that it
can
doable.
Be difficult. Yeah. And obviously it can be difficult. It can make things worse. But like at the end of the day, like you look back and like, I'm glad I had his music, right? Even though maybe during it, you're like, this makes me really sad. But
oh yeah, absolutely.
But looking back, you're like, I think it really did help because it allowed me to unbox some things and and that's what I think this episode's about. I mean, you gotta go in and start wherever you'd like and see what it has to offer and do the research on your own because we can talk about it to the ends of for another 2 hours, but like it'll be a lot of the same. It'll be like, gotta go listen. So
yeah, and I'll end it actually with some words from Chris Cornell, one of Mark's contemporaries from the era. And on Twitter one time, Chris was replying to somebody, and he said, the thing is, he was responding to somebody who I think was, kind of feeling down in the dumps. And Chris goes on to say, the thing is that we all feel like that from time to time. Thus, the strange duality that the feeling which is most lonely unifies us. And that was my experience with Mark's music, and it continues to be my experience with Mark's music. It's just one of those things that I know no matter what I'm feeling, no matter how unified or isolated I'm feeling, I've got an ally in his music. Somewhere in his catalog, there is a song for me that is going to be there for me. And that's not a gift that every artist can give you. And that's certainly a gift that, I will carry with me for the rest of my life, from Mark Lanegan. And, I remember when he died, I was like, fuck, like, it's just, it was strange. It's probably one of the celebrity deaths that was more jarring for me, because objectively it shouldn't have been, but it was just one of those things that, it just felt better knowing that guy was out there making stuff. And it sucks that he's not here. And certainly it sucks a lot more for his wife and for his friends and family. But I think anytime somebody passes away, like you do lose something, but we can be grateful for the work that he did and the fact that he chose to share this shit with us, because I mean, there's the specifics of the darkest things I've gone through, I don't know that I could ever be able to share with people, let alone, press it onto a record or write it in a book and send it out into the world.
Yeah.
So I'm impressed. Yeah, I'm grateful.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody. I mean, you're like, I was in a tough spot. It was very dark, and it's really hard to say what it was or what that feel. It's really hard to explain how those feelings are. And yeah, you got the news, and I remember you telling me, like, Mark Lanegan died. Like, I'm not surprised. Like, it's crazy that he made it this long, and I spent my life trying every way to die. It is my fate to be the last one standing. That is very powerful. Yeah, very crazy words to write. So I think to finish this, talk about Mark, we put the Mark's 10 Commandments, and I think that it might be a good thing to finish with before we sign off.
Absolutely, yeah. So this was from a feature that Q Magazine did in March of 2020 in the lead up to Mark's memoir, and then the accompanying album, Straight Songs of Sorrow. So how deep do we want to get into these? Do we want to just read the bold taglines, or should we get into them a little bit? Because there's some accompanying parts. It's pretty long.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think if we feel the need to elaborate, we can. But I think we got to get through all 10. So just
exactly. So we'll start with the first commandment from Mark Lanegan, and it's number 1. It's good to be different. Don't ever let anyone give you shit because you don't fit society's idea of normal. And that's obviously a very good lesson. You kind of develop your own way, and follow it because it's something that you know who you are. And fear. You got to follow your heart. And that's all you can do, and don't buy into shit, that's being sent your way. So I like that one. We'll move on to number 2, give the gift of healing. If you can help one person not feel so alone, you've done a great thing. Music did that for me as a lonely kid. And I remember the first time I read this, I got kind of chills when I read that part, because that's exactly, what Mark's music did for me, and Mark's music's done for thousands of people.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Number 3, own or take care of an animal. I think that's important, Chris.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to have a companion in your life. You got to have somebody that you can, I don't know, that's not human. Like, that you're not going to have to battle with as much, or I don't know, something about owning it. I don't own a pet right now, though. So
it's true, though.
I grew up living with one.
And Mark loved his animals, that's for sure. Number 4, remain curious, keep learning. And he goes on to speak about the fact that he grew up in a really, really small town, that was really far away from any semblance of society. And, a lot of people were, closed-minded and they develop, a sense of fear because, they don't have any experiences. And he goes on to say that he loved Anthony Bourdain, who was an enthusiastic and loyal friend, but was so important because he spent a large part of his life casually traveling to many places that a lot of people vilified and embraced local cultures. And when you keep learning, you can be an example of what love, courage, and empathy and compassion look like. And that's obviously as the world continues to change and develop, and I think different people become more afraid and more hateful of one another. That's always a good one to know.
Number 5, every day is a new beginning. This is important. Every day is an opportunity to create a new future. Don't forget to create your own reality. Know the differences between what you own and what someone else's idea of you is. It's none of my business what anyone else thinks of me if I know who I am. And you put that quote down specifically as well. And that's a good one. I mean, there's always going to be people that have opinions on you and doesn't like what you're doing. There's going to be people that support you. And the main thing is to really know who you are and what you're good at. And what your passions are. Yeah.
If you know who you are, you've got peace when you lay down your head at night, I think. Moving on to number 6, try to have a job you enjoy, at least one you can find some satisfaction in. Too many people spend the majority of their lives working a job they hate just to pay the bills. I've been blessed to do something I love for a living, but it gets harder by the year for musicians as the cultural shift in how people get their music has driven many out of the business. And that's important too. But, you always talk to people, it's like, oh, like, what do you do for work? It's like, oh, I'm a such and such. It's like, well, do you like it? And the common response is, well, the money's good. I think we have to do things that can, stimulate us, or at the very least, do something that allows us to spend, the rest of our time doing things that stimulate and excite us. I think that's a really important thing. And certainly, as Mark had mentioned, earlier, as we talked about, the music for him was its own reward. So something really special.
Number 7, have a moment for the less fortunate. And, I think that probably through his addiction and his troubles and stuff, I mean, this was really important to him. And one of those sentences is, the brutality of living out of doors takes an unbelievable strength of physical and psychic willpower. God forbid by circumstances you ever find yourself there. And a lot of times, you just, things are going well and you never expect to be in a position where you're maybe homeless or, jobless, friendless, and really on an island. So when you're, not in those positions, I think that it's important to, understand the reality that, there are people there that didn't expect to be where they are and they need a helping hand too. And like you said, it's very unpredictable out there. So
yeah,
you got to be there for people, even when it's not, I don't know.
Yeah, even when you feel like you're not going to need somebody to be there for you.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't know. I think about, with Thanksgiving, it's like, over the years we've had, non-family members. It's like, come over for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And they come over and they join. And it's been, over time, it's been very random. Like one time, my grandparents, they're awesome and they're very giving and, throughout their life. But they had somebody that was over from Turkey, and he was setting up, cause they owned a chicken, a hatchery and whatnot. So we were building incubators, and this guy named Bobislav came over to build it, and he had nowhere to go on Thanksgiving. He was going to work, but we had him come over for turkey, and he was very, very thankful for it. But it was really random because we had Bobislav at the table.
Absolutely, but that's what you do, and like going back to like number 4, like remain curious, keep learning. I mean, that's a lot of ways that you can learn. You invite conversations and you talk to people with experiences that are different from you. And I think especially, people who have struggled with things other than you can learn a lot and, hopefully be able to assist people like that more through those interactions. So it's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
We'll move on to number 8. Look for music off the beaten path. And Mark says, I will never forget the music that changed my life. Where I grew up, most people had no awareness of who Jimi Hendrix was, which is fitting because today is his birthday, the day that this is out. My saving grace was a small record store run by a hippie who was curious for the new and weird. And he goes on to talk about a lot of the songs and music that he had learned. And that, he continued his quest of discovery for the new, exotic, and interesting because of that fire that was lit by that hippie running the record store. I think everybody's got a couple of people in their life like that can turn them on to some stuff that they wouldn't otherwise know. So, we hope to continue to do that for people. I'd like to think that we have at points, and get them interested into some new stuff. And my one wish is that anybody who listens to this, gives Mark Lanegan's music some time to maybe do that for them. So, Ethan, number 9 is one that I'm very happy. This is fitting that you're going to be reading this. I feel like this is a good one for you.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing as I saw it. Get your hands in the dirt. And basically he talks about how the earth is being pillaged and raped and how it's very difficult to see it go that way. But, at the end he says, there's something meditative about doing some small gesture that gives to the earth and takes my mind off the futility of my actions. And Mother Nature and being out there and doing something that is breaks a sweat, gets your hands dirty. I mean, it is something so fulfilling, and it could be as simple as, trimming a tree or raking the leaves and stuff. And it really grounds you when, I say it all the time. It's like, I gotta go pick up, I gotta leave the house. Sometimes you just gotta leave the house and get out there. And, there's so many jobs that doesn't seem necessarily like productive, or not productive, but like what do you bring to the table? And I always think like those physical jobs of like working and like, building or, clearing or, planting, and I don't know, those things are always they seem so what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. They give you a sense of that you're helping and getting a job done. I don't know. I really like that. I think it's a good thing to live
tangible by. Progress, with with things that already exist here. Yeah, I think that's cool, and it's important to do. Rake and even whatever it is. You gotta get out there a little bit and connect with the environment a little bit. And I'm horrible at it, but hopefully this can be a reminder for me to look up from my goddamn phone screen every now and then.
The other day we had my friend Jacob was over, and we were watching. What were we watching? Something. Oh, it's a TV show. And we heard this pack of dogs, this wild pack of dogs out, like really yelling and stuff. And like we had to get up and go and investigate. And we we wanted to see them really bad. And I was thinking about like my grandparents have a bird bath, and they look at the birds, and sometimes they send me emails, and they're like, the squirrels are very busy this season. They're, they're collecting the nuts, and it's so simple, that they bring this up, and elderly and older people, they kind of like enjoy watching the birds. And as a young kid, you just like what the heck? Like, yeah, why would you put up something? But like, the older I get, the more I think I understand, like just seeing those nature, the interactions that obviously like the world of nature has, but then, you can see them and stuff. And it is very life-giving in a weird way.
Yeah.
Just want to throw that in there for some reason.
I agree. I like that. Yeah, we can all pause and watch when we have to. So the 10th and final commandment from Mark Lanegan is to have a sense of humor. And he goes on to relate this a lot to technology and social media, and how everybody is quick to criticize and comment, and how oftentimes he would fall into the same pattern, but then he would remind himself, to maybe not take things so heavily, and to try to elicit laughter from people. And he said a lot of times he would have interactions with some fans, and he went on to say that usually the ensuing brief internet conversation ends with me laughing and hopefully my target doing the same. And that can obviously be extended, far beyond the reaches of the internet. I think it's important to have a sense of humor. I mean, a lot of things can happen in our day-to-day life, and I think a lot of things are made easier if we can look on the bright side of things and maybe laugh about stuff a little bit. I think in time, a lot of things, you can find humor in a lot of things.
Yes, absolutely. So those are Mark Lanegan's 10 Commandments. Pretty interesting. I was kind of thinking like it would be kind of a cool practice of our own to write our own 10 Commandments, what it would come up to be, and
Grunge
what route
10 Commandments.
Go, and what do you think is important. Yeah. So thank you for making it to the end of the episode. I hope that
you're a survivor.
We didn't ramble too much. Yeah, and you guys kind of got something out of it, and basically understand that it's worth getting into. It's worth listening. Go in there and check it out. And you never know what you're going to find with this type of music.
Absolutely. Well, I think with that, it's time for some songs of the week, right?
Oh yeah, Chris. Would you like to go first?
Yeah, I will go first, and I'm going to choose a Mark Lanegan song, and I had mentioned it earlier, but it is going to be the first track from Straight Songs of Sorrow, called "I Wouldn't Want to Say," and this is one that is more inducing of lowercase f flashbacks, than almost any other song that I know, but I think it just speaks to like the downright weird ways that Mark was making music at times. I don't even know how to describe it, but I think you got to listen to it, because I mean, you can listen to it and remind yourself that it's the same dude who sang on "Nearly Lost You," and it's just like a wildly different composition. And the lyrics are pretty fucking cool too. There was one that I always used to focus on when I was listening to it. It's like, all those who used to help me have scattered like mice. And I remember listening to that and thinking that, but Mark was there. So that's going to be my song of the week from Straight Songs of Sorrow. "I Wouldn't Want to Say."
Awesome. That's a good one. I knew, and I was debating if I wanted to pick a Lanegan song, but I knew that you were going to pick that. But I have another one from a man that, same, really not a similar story, but has a history with really shitty life, and he wrote some great stuff. And that's going to be from Jackson C. Frank.
Nice.
And a song that, came on the other day, and I loved it. It's "Cover Me with Roses," which is a beautiful, honestly, I just heard the chorus and I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to learn how to play this on guitar and sing it. And I don't feel that often or feel the
It doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah, it does not. I was like, this is just a song that I want to be able to like pull out for whatever. It's like, yeah, these are the only chords and the only lyrics that I know by heart. But just a really beautiful song. And yeah, he has a sad story and but is regarded as, getting music history has given him his flowers, his roses, if you will, over the years. So yeah, Cover Me With Roses by Jackson C. Frank. Awesome vocals.
That's amazing. Well, those are two great songs, two fantastic singer-songwriters, and two men who deserve to have their music persist on, as time moves forward. So that is episode 140 of the Grunge Bible Podcast. I hope you are well, and we can't wait to talk to you again in episode 141, which will be the first episode of the last month of 2023. Closing time is coming. It's going to be coming out on December the 4th. It might be Spotify Wrapped season by then. Who's to say? I wouldn't want to say. But we got a couple more good things hopefully coming your way before the end of the year. So we hope you stick around for that and maybe get some more people on board for this as we charge into 2024, which is going to be the third year of podcasting for us. Fourth year.
I was about to say, I mean, we
started in March 2021.
Once we hit 156, that'll be the 3 year.
That's fucked.
Yeah,
a lot of episodes. Well,
yeah.
However long or short you are with us on this journey, we thank you, and we're grateful for you. So we will hopefully talk to you next week. But until then, rock and roll, stay heavy, do all that shit that we normally tell you to do.
That's right. I got a flight to catch, Chris.
Yeah, man,
so it's time to head out.
Let's get the hell out of here.
We did it. We did it, man.
We did it, man. Not a moment too soon. All right, Ethan, go catch your flight. Everyone else, we'll catch you later.
See you guys.
See you later.